John Heilemann of New York Magazine is a co-author of the new bestseller, Game Change, a book about the 2008 presidential race that looks closely at the Edwards campaign. Good morning, John.
Good morning.
In addition to your book, which already came out, another one is coming out shortly that deals exclusively with John Edwards and the affair. Right. Do you think that he finally admitted to being the father of this child to get ahead of that book?
I think that certainly was part of it, and I think he was under some pressure from Elizabeth Edwards to do this. I think both because she thought it was the right thing to do for him to admit that he was the father of the child, but I also think that there was an additional publicity consideration. Rael Hunter, his mistress and the mother of the child, was engaged in a child support lawsuit against Edwards that was about to come to open court, and I think both of the Edwardses thought that there would be damaging information, even more damaging information that's already been out, and they didn't want to see that come out in open court and wanted to shut it down before that happened.
Because there have been some damaging leaks from the book that's going to come out by Andrew Young, including claims that Edwards had planned to fake a paternity test. Who is Andrew Young?
Well, Andrew Young was the ultimate Edwards factotum. He was basically had done a lot of menial tasks for John Edwards for a long time. In the course of the presidential campaign, just before the Iowa caucuses, he was the person who came out and claimed paternity of the child originally, and that raised a lot of eyebrows among a lot of people. People thought that this was a loyalist who was in some way trying to do a favor, take the fall for John Edwards. It was particularly suspicious among Edwards aides who knew, because they'd known Andrew Young for a long time. They knew that Andrew Young had had a vasectomy a couple of years before, and so it seemed a little implausible to them that he was the father of this new child.
In addition to his book, your book talks a little bit about the affair as well, and you explain why John Edwards may have originally confessed to the affair but denied paternity. You write, quote, "Don't do this interview unless you plan to tell the whole truth," Palmieri urged him, Palmieri being an Edwards aide. Edwards replied that he was going to confess the affair but deny paternity. He didn't want to jeopardize his chances of being Obama's attorney general. So he really thought he had a political chance even after the affair came out? That
was in the summer of 2008, just before the Democratic convention, and Edwards both thought that he possibly had a role in the future Obama administration, also wanted to keep his primetime speaking role at the Democratic convention. In our book, I think there's a fair amount of kind of crazy behavior among the candidates in our book. There's nothing more delusional than the notion that John Edwards, having fathered this child, would somehow end up being the Attorney General of the United States.
Something else I found interesting in your book is that you debunk the image that was portrayed of Elizabeth Edwards. It's sort of Saint Elizabeth.
Yeah, I mean, Elizabeth Edwards is obviously a really sympathetic figure. She lost a son to a car crash. She had suffered 2 bouts of cancer, and her husband had done some pretty horrible things to her. At the same time, one of the things that Mark Halpern and I, my co-author, found was that universally among Edwards aides, there was a different picture of Elizabeth Edwards, and these people would say to us that there was no one in American life for whom the gap between the public image and the private reality was so great. She was a very difficult woman to deal with for both her husband and for all of the people around them.
John Heilemann, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Appreciate
Thanks a lot.
you being here.